Now, you may have caught my previous video, which had the title TikTok Killer, and it was talking about the Brock family murders. Now, this case is brand new. Well, at least the arrest is brand new. The case occurred in February earlier this year. I'll just give you a quick recap, but if you want a full background on the case, then I will add the link below for the first video that I did in this case. I will also point out that Plunder True Crime is covering this case, and she has got the dispatch audio on her channel, so I will add the link for that also, so you can hop over and listen to that. And on that note, I do want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Plunder, who has helped me out with documents which would otherwise be unavailable to me as an Australian. Seems like Georgia doesn't particularly like allowing access to court documents, court pages, county sheriff's documents, anything like that, if you are not American. So a huge thank you to Paula for grabbing those first lot of documents for me, and please do go over there and share a bit of love. Now, in this video, I'm going to specifically focus on the charges relating to what occurred, but first of all, I am going to give you a really quick recap so that you know what is actually going on here. So on the 20th of February this year, 2025, James and Kristin Brock were found not alive in their bedroom by their 6-year-old daughter. She went and found her older sister, who at the time was 16, who then rang 911 and reported their deaths. According to family members of these individuals, there had been 5 gunshots fired. Now here's where it gets interesting. There was no sign of a break-in. There was no sign of a disturbance. There was a door left ajar. But not only was there no sign of an intruder, there was nothing missing. Investigators were immediately able to rule out a unaliving pact because neither Kristin or James owned a firearm. There had never been one on their property. They had never owned one. And while I don't know if the situation has changed, there was no firearm recovered in connection with this crime. Now, you fast forward to this week, and Kristin's now 17-year-old daughter, stepdaughter of James, by the name of Sarah Grace Patrick, has been arrested on 4 counts in relation to them not being alive. Now, in yesterday's video, I did go into all this in more depth, and there's so many more elements to this. So it's definitely worth going and having a look at that first video. But one thing that I wanted to touch on is some comments that were made in the press conference.
The pursuit of justice does not end today, however. It is very possible, because this remains an open and ongoing investigation, that more arrests and charges could be made. But she has been arrested and charged now, and we feel confident that she is responsible for their murders. But like I said, it is an open, ongoing investigation. It's very possible others are involved as well.
Now, when I heard her say that, I did make note of the fact. But I did also recognise the fact that you hear this so often in cases. When Richard Allen was arrested for the deaths of Abby and Libby, we heard a similar thing, even though it turns out he was the sole culprit. And like I said, it is really not uncommon to hear these sorts of comments from law enforcement. On one hand, it allows them to basically lock up every document related to that case, because if they can claim that it is an ongoing investigation with a possibility of an additional arrest, that gives them enough cause to be able to say, sorry, we understand that there are laws in America for freedom of information requests, but in this instance, we are protected because this is an ongoing investigation and there's quite possibly another person to be arrested. It's also a strategy that can be used to gain additional tips, because people are more likely to contact law enforcement with tips if they think that there is a possibility of further arrests, rather than if someone's been arrested and they think the case is done and dusted. So it is, for that reason, also standard protocol quite often. Now, given her age, I must admit, my first thought was, did somebody from her family protect her after she did this? But then I was able to brush that off because, as I mentioned in my previous video, her father was the one who took her into the police station to hand herself in. And having researched a bit further, he was the one who made her hand herself in. So he actually jumped in and did the right thing and took her to the police station so that she could be arrested for her crimes. Now I'm going to address the title of this video, or at least the thumbnail, the suggestion that this could be another Gypsy Rose kind of case. And yes, I intentionally chose an arrest photo, or at least a early jail photo for Gypsy Rose, because she doesn't deserve to have her face flashed on any sort of social media these days. She manipulated a young man to unalive her mother. She played a huge role in that. And yet, she's trying to get herself this celebrity status. And she came out of jail and jumped on TikTok and made herself like a huge star. And this is one of the similarities, because this girl, Sarah Grace Patrick, did just that after her parents had died. She went on TikTok sharing her grief with the world. And you can see more of that in my other video, as I mentioned. But turns out it's quite possible that the similarity does not end there. It is possible that a boyfriend or a former boyfriend may have actually assisted Sarah Grace. So it turns out that Sarah Grace was not your happy little perfect girl guide. She did have does have a dark side, clearly. When she was 15, she started dating a boy by the name of Jackson Spradlin, as you can see here on the screen, although that's not what he really looks like. This is the real Jackson Spradlin. Now, like I said, he is a former boyfriend, and since breaking up with him, Sarah Grace has had another boyfriend. But let's start with Jackson Spradlin. So, her mother and her stepfather did not approve of him, which it appears was probably a good thing, because he was booked in on the 2nd of July for manufacturing, distributing controlled substances, 2 counts of that, 1 count of manufacturing and possessing with intent synthetic cannabinoid MJ or K2FE. There were also 3 counts of possession of a F-arm or knife during commission or attempt to commit certain felonies, and 1 count of possession of pistol or revolver by person under 18 years of age. So he's a bit of a nasty piece of work. And what is really interesting here is his charges relating to firearms. Because, as I mentioned, there wasn't a firearm kept or owned in the Brock home. There wasn't a firearm recovered after the crime. Sarah Grace was 16 at the time of the crime, so she couldn't get access to one. She couldn't go and buy one for herself. So it seems that someone may have supplied her with that firearm. Is this guy a candidate Could we be hearing of him facing arrest down the track? There were certainly restrictions placed on her relationship with him because her parents disapproved of him. They felt he was a bad influence. But let's talk about the more recent boyfriend, because he could also be a candidate here for arrest. Because as it turns out, the newer boyfriend is considerably older than Sarah Patrick. Now, I've had a dig. I haven't been able to find who he is yet, but obviously if he's involved, we'll soon find out who he is. But it turns out that she was dating a guy who was significantly older than her, a guy who neither of her parents wished her to have anything to do with. They had placed serious restrictions on her ability to see him. And honestly, going by her first boyfriend, if he's anything to go by, then there's probably good reason why her parents didn't want her having anything to do with her new boyfriend. So the question is, was this a similar situation where this girl wasn't allowed to see her boyfriend, so her response to that was to basically end the lives of her mother and her stepfather? To date, there's been no mention of motive, but at the same time, they're being very, very quiet about that weapon. And they have made this comment that there could be another arrest in the pipeline. Now, it sounds like this could differ in one way from the Gypsy Rose situation. Obviously, you don't have that whole Munchausen thing going on, but it appears that authorities seem to be quite clear when they say that they believe that Sarah was responsible for the deaths, meaning they seem to believe that she was the one in possession of the weapon at the time when the event occurred. That said, given that they are being super hush-hush about the investigation, if she did convince a boyfriend or former boyfriend to actually do the act on her behalf, then yes, she still can face those charges. If she was the one who planned what occurred, if she was the one who encouraged what occurred, then she could still be facing those charges as a result of that, not as a result of her own physical actions. And they're not going to tell us anything like that unless or until a second arrest is made. Of course, if it is the older boyfriend, what could make this particularly interesting is that if he faces similar charges to her, as an adult, he could be facing the death penalty. While for Sarah Grace Patrick, the law actually prevents that because she was 16 years old at the time of the offence. So while she is being charged as an adult, the DP is off the table, and if she's given a life sentence, that life sentence has to come with the possibility of parole. Could this be another Gypsy Rose situation where the guy ends up being the one facing the much harsher penalty despite not being the person who planned the crime in the first place? Could it be that whichever boyfriend it is simply provided the weapon and did not actually participate in the crime? But the thing is, if that is the case, clearly they have also aided in this crime, quite possibly also disposed of the weapon. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this case in the coming weeks. because it seems like there is a high chance that there will be another arrest. So keep an eye out in the next couple of days. I'll be putting out a few different videos. I want to do a video where I pull apart her eulogy that she did at her parents' funeral. And I'm also going to do a separate video where I look at all her TikTok posts and all her comments that were made there. In terms of FOIA requests, as you probably gathered from what I was saying here, I mentioned in yesterday's video that I was going to try and access things via FOIA. I hit a few obstacles, but I was able to get things from the courthouse webpage, thanks to Plunder. In the meantime, Plunder did do FOIA requests and they have been denied because it is an ongoing case. So I couldn't tell you a time frame for FOIA requests. Maybe if there's an additional arrest, then documents may become available then through the FOIA process. So it seems that in the meantime, the legal side of this case has been locked up super tight, and we're not going to get access to anything at this point in time. As mentioned, there were some documents available through the courthouse page. Basically, all that was a motion requesting bail for Sarah and copies of the arrest warrants. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And of course, to help me get these videos out there into the algorithm, please hit that like button and please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.